What if everything in your life, your health, your mind, even your fate, was sealed long before you were born? What if, generation after generation, your family folded inward into an invisible circle, where love and blood shared the same origin? For centuries, the world has known the dangers of inbreeding. Kings married cousins, queens married brothers, all in the name of preserving a pure bloodline, and the cost was deformities, mental illness, and entire dynasties condemned by their obsession with keeping the throne. But this isn't just history. Deep in rural America, in a forgotten place called Odd, West Virginia, lives a family whose story feels torn from the pages of a Gothic legend. They wear no crowns, they hold no castles, but in their bodies and in their silence lives the genetic echo of generations without escape. They are the Whitakers. And this is the story of America's most inbred family, a clan shrouded in tragedy, mystery, and a late exposure that turned their private suffering into global curiosity. The curse of blood is not just an ancient myth, it lives among us, and it begins now. Odd, a strange name for a town and perhaps a warning. Tucked within the dense mountains of West Virginia, this rural community is isolated not only by geography, but by history. The dirt roads that lead there seem to carry you backward in time to a forgotten version of America. It was in this isolation that the Whitaker family took root. Little is known about their earliest ancestors, but old records suggest their lineage arrived in the area in the late 1800s. They were poor farmers, living off the land and the forest. And more importantly, they lived far from everything and everyone. The community was small, the pool of potential partners even smaller. Over time, the Whitakers began marrying within the family, not out of taboo but out of necessity, ignorance, and survival. Their family tree began to fold inward. Branches crossed, last names disappeared. What remained was a closed circle, where siblings, cousins, aunts, and uncles became husbands, wives, fathers, and mothers. As decades passed, this mix of isolation and inbreeding began to exact a heavy toll. Children were born with severe physical and cognitive disabilities. Some could not speak. Others displayed primal, almost feral behaviors. Yet in those mountains, this was seen as normal. While the world changed, the Whitakers remained invisible, untouched, until a camera found them. But before that moment, they were just one of many families in the Appalachians, surviving on the margins of society, carrying a bloodline no one dared name. It was there, among wooden shacks and generations of silent genes, that the Whitaker curse began. Among the many faces marked by inbreeding in the Whitaker family, 3 names stand out: Lorraine, Ray, and Timmy. They are not fictional characters, nor exaggerated symbols. They are real. They breathe. They live. And in their bodies and minds lie the most visible signs of a collapsing bloodline. Lorraine is the quiet matriarch. Her closed expression and distant gaze conceal decades of silent suffering. She is the mother of several children, including Timmy, perhaps the most genetically affected individual in the family. Lorraine rarely speaks. When she does, her words are fragments, like shards of a consciousness buried deep inside. But in her eyes, there is something deeper, the weight of generations of pain with no name. Timmy, on the other hand, does not speak. He cannot read. He cannot write. His movements are instinctive. He grunts, paces, and reacts with almost animalistic expressions. It's as if he were born between two worlds, human in form, but detached from language, logic, and what we call civilization. He is the living embodiment of what happens when a bloodline loops in on itself, generation after generation. Ray is the brother who speaks for them all. Quite literally, he greets visitors. He tries to explain the inexplicable with a stuttering voice and a protective demeanor. Ray has become the guardian of a family's dignity, a family that much of the world now views with either fascination or disdain. Their generation marks the peak of the Whitaker genetic collapse, and perhaps a point of no return. For decades, the Whitakers lived in anonymity, unseen by the world. But everything changed in 2020 when photographer and documentarian Mark Leda found them. What he captured and shared with the public defied conventions, shattered stigmas, and unsettled the comfort of emotional distance. Lyda's project, Soft White Underbelly, set out to reveal the forgotten faces of America: addicts, the homeless, ex-convicts. But nothing, not even for Lyda, compared to the encounter with the Whitakers. His first visit was startling. Ray barked like a dog. Timmy grunted and twisted. Lorraine barely spoke. And yet, within that chaos, there was a strange sense of normalcy. The video went viral. Millions of views. Comments flooded in, some filled with compassion, others dripping with cruelty. Some labeled the family a freak show, while others called them saints forgotten by time. Mainstream media, podcasts, even celebrities started discussing the Whitakers. And looming over it all was one burning question. Was it ethical to expose them like this? Lyda defended his work. He claimed he gave a voice to those who had none, using the reach of the internet to raise funds and provide real support: food, shelter, dignity. Many applauded. Others argued that turning human suffering into viral content, no matter how well-intentioned, bordered on exploitation. But one thing is clear. After Soft White Underbelly, the Whitakers were no longer hidden in the hills of West Virginia. They became a mirror, one that forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. In a world of progress and global connection, there are still places where genetics follow their own law, unseen, silent, and devastating. It's easy to believe that cases like the Whitakers belong to a distant past, to the days of absolute monarchs, Egyptian pharaohs, and royal families who married siblings to keep the throne. But the story of America's most inbred family forces us to ask a more disturbing question. Why does this still happen today? The answer lies not just in DNA. It lies in isolation, in poverty, and in forgotten mountain regions where roads end and hope rarely arrives. Odd West Virginia is a microcosm of something bigger. Entire communities disconnected from healthcare, education, and opportunity. In places like this, inbreeding isn't a plan, it's a consequence. A result of generational exclusion, a lack of potential partners, and a void of genetic education, access to medical care, or family planning. Often, it's paired with a silence passed down, like a tradition no one ever dared question. Comparing the Whitakers to the Habsburgs may seem extreme, but both tell the same truth. When blood circulates within a closed loop for too long, the body and mind eventually pay the price. Whether for power, like royal dynasties, or from neglect, like Appalachian poverty, the outcome is the same. The modern curse of inbreeding isn't just genetic, it's social. And as long as there are places abandoned by progress, it will remain alive, breeding not just mutations but sorrow. The story of the Whitakers isn't just a genetic curiosity, nor a grotesque spectacle. It's a raw, unfiltered portrait of the consequences of a collective failure. Our failure to notice, to care, to intervene in time. Yes, inbreeding shaped their lives, but not alone. It was institutional neglect, social invisibility, and the silent judgment of a world that allowed their collapse to go unnoticed for decades. The true mistake wasn't biological, it was human. It's easy to watch the videos, to gawk, to joke, but much harder to understand that every vacant stare, every grunt from Timmy, every silence from Lorraine, carries the weight of a deeper wound, one not only embedded in DNA, but in history. And yet, despite it all, the Whitakers endure. They live, they laugh among themselves, they take care of one another. In their own way, they are a family. And maybe that is both the most tragic and the most beautiful part. Even with the world watching with shock or scorn, they continue, as they always have. Their bodies may bear the scars of genetics, but it was society that shaped their fate. The curse of blood doesn't just lie in the genes. It lives in our choices, and in every time we turn away from suffering we don't understand. And as long as we continue to make that choice, stories like the Whitakers will keep forming in silence, out there, where the roads end, and voices disappear into the mountains.